Welcome to Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Are we out of it? Out of what? Are we out? Well, not toilet paper, but are we out of the COVID hassles, the COVID concerns, the COVID scares? Here in New Mexico in summer of 2021, are we out of this drama? Well, I'm not sure. You have to decide for yourself and your family, but I do have a guest today, Carla Sonntag. She is the executive director of the New Mexico Business Coalition, who is going to share her insight about New Mexico businesses, how they fared during this past year, during this horrendous year of COVID, and if they're out of it, and what that means to you and me. So please stay with us as we discuss the future of New Mexico, because business is what makes everything go around in our state and in our country. And are they out of it? You decide right after this. Stay with us. I smile on the show when I'm nervous, and I laugh out of nerves because it's a nervous time, not just for me, but of course for you, your family, your friends, your businesses down the street. They've gone through a horrible, horrendous year, and Carla Sonntag knows better than most of us what has been going on with New Mexico businesses. And she's been fighting. She's been a fighter in Santa Fe at the legislature, and she's been fighting a lot of places recently. She's going to share us about the fight about unemployment insurance. We've heard in the headlines recently that it was overspent by over $500 million in New Mexico. Something that kind of took us, maybe some of us by surprise, but not Carla. Carla, take it away. Share with us, of course, about businesses, but let's start about the unemployment. I know you were in Santa Fe fighting for the unemployment insurance rate, but tell us about New Mexico businesses and how they've been affected by COVID being closed down, by employees not coming. They're going on unemployment. They can't get them back on the job because they're making a lot more in unemployment. So you've been a fighter on this.
It's such a deep and broad subject, but I will tell you, starting last year in June, we wrote and passed a law to protect employers from this massive layoff that occurred that was nothing to do with them. It wasn't their fault, their choice. When the governor shut down the state, employees left. So,
and right now, in the past, employers have to pay what, an unemployment insurance rate? Tell me, if we're not a business owner, tell me first about that, what obligations businesses have regarding unemployment.
Employers pay a tax. Employees don't pay any portion of that, but it's to cover the employees if they are laid off or out of work. And during the pandemic, we had a lot of people laid off. Some businesses kept operating and did fine, those that were considered essential. We kind of thought every business was essential because every employee is essential to the state and to their families. But be that as it may, we lost a lot of employees.
And so when that happens, a business, let's just say it's a family dry cleaner. I mean, we talk always about restaurants, they're in this, but let's say it's a gift shop. They hire employees. Well, this employer has been paying unemployment insurance for their employees. They didn't lay them off because they wanted to stay open, but the governor shut them down. Mm-hmm. So their employees went on unemployment. So do we taxpayers pay for that, or just the businesses?
Just the businesses, the way that it is set up. And so they're paying this rate, and it's based on experience. So an employer that has a very high turnover, that employees don't stay, they're going to pay a higher rate because their experience modification goes up. Well, they had their rate. Now we have these massive layoffs. All these businesses that had no choice send their employees home. That should not have counted against them because of the law that we passed last June. Normally it would have.
Oh, because they were penalized because they said you laid off people. Well, they didn't really. The
Exactly.
people- okay.
So we went to the legislature last June in a special session and said, please don't hold this against employers. They had no choice here. And so they graciously agreed and passed a law that said those layoffs would not count against employers. Because if they do, the rates go up very high, but not just for 1 year, follows them for 3 years.
And it was no fault of their own. Okay, so
Exactly.
they agreed.
Right, so we passed the law. Unfortunately, Workforce Solutions under Secretary McCamley was not following that law. And so he was charging back against several employers all these layoffs. We saw rates go up over 1,000%. Now businesses are trying to open again and get employees back to work. You have 1,000% increase on unemployment insurance.
And that's a tax, the tax.
It's a tax. Can you imagine coming back after over a year of not working? Now you come back and you're trying to operate again, trying to get employees back to work, and that tax alone goes up over 1,000%.
Well, that tax was illegal because there was a law passed, thanks to the New Mexico Business Coalition, and the legislators passed it, saying you cannot tax them.
Right, but they did in some cases, not all cases. So, we filed a complaint. We asked the secretary to please fix that. Plus, we pointed out there was a growing number of fraudulent cases. We're getting all kinds of fraud cases into our office. Well, we don't handle it, but we're trying to help employers with it.
And what do you mean fraudulent cases? I've heard of some, but share with our viewers.
So we had one employer that had 3 cases filed against him for unemployment, and they were 3 former clients. They had never worked for him. And one of those people had died. They years ago, had passed away. So somewhere, somebody got these 3 names and claimed unemployment insurance against this employer for people that had never worked there.
So these 3 people, one dead, received unemployment checks from a fund that the employer had paid into fraudulently because they had never even worked to be laid off, yet alone to get unemployment. But the employer, his rate went up because of those 3?
We don't know that yet because what happened was, and we don't know if the claims were paid, but now breaking news today, $250 million of unemployment benefits paid out, shouldn't have been paid out. 133 million of that was fraud. So
how much?
133 million.
Meaning, and I've heard since it hit the news that some businesses said, well, I never even employed John Garcia.
Right.
And they got unemployment and they weren't even an employee ever.
Yes, we also had cases of active employees who had not been laid off where a fraudulent claim was made on their behalf, asking for unemployment. They're still working for the employer, never left employment.
How did the employer ever know about some of these cases? How does an employer know if there is an employee who had filed or a non-employee fraudulently applied? Do they receive a report?
They're supposed to get notice from Workforce Solutions, but that is not a fail-safe. And so we're always recommending to employers, check your account with Workforce Solutions on a regular basis. Check for fraud, check for correct entries, that all the money that you're paying into the system is being attributed to your account, because that helps keep your rates lower. And so there's a lot of reasons why employers need to go there and check. And now we see a multitude of reasons why we can't rely on the government to be necessarily taking care of what we think they're taking care of.
So you went to Workforce Solutions, the cabinet secretary, you went to the governor, then also you went to the attorney general. Tell me a little bit about that. And I think you went to Legislative Finance Committee with all this information that finally disclosed it all. Finally.
Right. Yeah, so we asked the secretary nicely to please fix the problems that were occurring within the department. He didn't reply. We sent our request, and I had 9 other signatories, 9 other associations and 1 large employer signed on to this letter. We sent that to the governor, no reply. So I called the state auditor and I said, Mr. Colon, you know how I am. You know I'm not going to go away. We have a law that is being violated by the state, and we have fraud. And that needs to be fixed. So he said, okay, give me a minute. He was going to meet with the secretary. The meeting didn't occur. I called him back. I said, where are we? To his credit, he is the one, I believe, that initiated the investigation that came out in the report yesterday. We simultaneously notified the Attorney General. Still no reply from him either. So you look at leadership, and you got to understand, leadership matters. What are these government officials doing? What do they do? And if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, are they getting it corrected? And where are the agencies that are supposed to hold them accountable, like the Attorney General? Why no reply? Why hasn't the governor replied about this?
Well, the Legislative Finance Committee is the one that exposed this.
Yes, after we filed the complaint, we spent weeks bringing in documentation for them to substantiate. Now, we sent documentation with our letter asking for this to be fixed, but they wanted more. So we spent weeks with employers sending us more fraud claims, more claims of violation of the law, and we continued to gather that information and put it into a form that they could use and send it to them. So that was part of the report that came out yesterday.
It came out in mid to late May. What about those employers who are being charged 1,000% over the rate, even though the law says they cannot be overcharged that? What's happening with them?
So the acting secretary, Ricky Cerna, has done a good job. The first thing he did, he came into my letter when Secretary McCamley left. He walks in, sees this letter, realizes they need to take some action. He immediately sent notice to all employers that had a rate increase, we're reevaluating your rates. And he has done that, and he is following the law. I've been in close communication with him. We had a meeting and he spoke to our members. He's very dedicated to correcting the problems that have occurred. Fraud, he can't do much about that. Unfortunately, there should have been better oversight in some of the claims that were paid. But that wasn't under him. He was the assistant director at the time.
Who does this ultimately affect? Taxpayers, businesses, the federal government? Because I think they had money that they were going to pay. Our unemployment claims were skyrocketing. Now we're finding out $500 million were due to fraud. So who's really ultimately hurt by all of this money loss?
Well, it's the business owners, because they're the only ones that pay into this system. And as a result, we're going to see there is an opportunity for the governor to fix this to some extent. The legislature passed in the budget $600 million to go into that fund. If the fund is at a good level, rates won't go up so high for employers. There's a second factor on that rate that impacts everybody.
The fund is being used too much and it goes down, then everybody's rates go up.
Yes.
So where would the $600 million come from? The federal stimulus, which is still taxpayers pay for, unless they...
That's correct. So the state put in enough to cover the debt to the feds through the end of this month. We owe them about $258 million through the end of June, the end of this fiscal year. If we can get employees back to work, then employers will start paying in. There'll be less money coming out. The fund will start replenishing.
Okay.
However, we lost a lot of money, not just by the fraud and the payments, the overpayments that were made wrongly by the department. So the legislature also put in $600 million to come from the federal stimulus. The governor vetoed that. She line item vetoed that. She said, we don't know if we have the authority to do it. Well, in the report that came out yesterday, yes, they do. And the legislature did have a right to put it in there. So we're hoping, if she's taking full discretion over those billions of dollars, that she can take a small percentage and put it into that fund where it should be.
What was her reasoning for vetoing it? Oh, she didn't think she had the right, but they spent a lot of other money they didn't know they had the right to.
Yeah.
And it is a small, $500 million compared to all the billions the state's getting. That's where it needs to go.
Yes, it does. Because employers, we saw coming out of the Great Recession, these rates go up really high. We're going to lose more businesses as we're trying to get them open right now. Can't afford it. As a state, for the employees' sake, they need work.
So again, thanks for educating us, Carla. They are impacted by if they use the unemployment too much, if they lay off people by their choice, not the government's choice, then they are impacted by the rate, but also everyone's impacted by the rate if the fund dwindles down.
Absolutely. So even those employers that never closed, if we don't get that fund replenished, their rates are going to go up just because of that.
Twofold hit on them.
Yes.
What is happening with businesses? We're seeing help wanted signs across the state.
Yes.
People, they need help. They need help, and there are people out there who have lost their jobs. Are they coming back? Are the people coming back?
Not quick enough. So we raised that issue, and we said, look, you waived the work search requirement at the beginning of the pandemic. We understand.
That means if someone's on unemployment, they're supposed to be looking for a job, I think, 2 times a week. Prove to Workforce Solutions, Labor Department, that they are actually looking for a job.
Yes.
And then get their unemployment check. Okay?
Right.
That was waived.
Yes, because at the beginning of the
They
pandemic, when
closed all the
everybody's laid
businesses.
down,
They closed all the businesses. So
there's no work to look for. But starting a few months ago, we slowly started seeing help wanted signs. We can't get the workers off of unemployment. Why? Because the state is paying almost an endless amount of benefits, like they're not expiring, they normally do. And then the federal government has added a supplement. 25 states have passed on the supplement from the federal government because they want their people back to work. That supplement alone creates a payment to unemployed workers that's sometimes higher than what they were making by employment. What's their motivation to go back to work? They get paid more to stay at home. So our state has not taken a pass on that. We're still supplementing it. We've got to get people back to work. They did reinstate the work search requirement, so we hope that'll help.
So on unemployment, people were getting what, about 400, what's the max here in New Mexico? 400 a month, 360, 380, 400 a month, week.
A week.
Then on top of that was what, a $300 a week supplement?
At least. Now, there were circumstances where some employees were making over $1,000 a week.
So that's $4,000 a month.
Yes.
In unemployment that
Yes.
a person was making here in New Mexico.
Yes.
And now people want them to go back and they say, no, I'm making $4,000 a month.
Right. And then, unfortunately, we have the mayor of Albuquerque who stands before the people in Albuquerque and says, we have a lot of open positions. Come in and fill out the paperwork and we'll wait until your unemployment benefits expire. Really? If you have a job and they're offered employment, why should they not take it? So this is where we're seeing the pushback from employers, which rightfully we should not even have this problem, but yet here we are.
When did this happen with the mayor? They were
Couple of weeks ago.
city jobs.
Yeah, yes. A couple of weeks ago, he did a state of the city address out at the Albuquerque airport and said, we have lots of positions filled, but don't worry, just fill it out and we'll wait until your benefits run out, and then you can come to work for us.
But the benefits really are they running out yet? I mean, before people were limited to a number of weeks, I'm not sure if 13 weeks
13 weeks.
13 weeks, then with this crisis when the government shut down all the businesses, then they said you can receive it. It seems like what, forever? Or how long?
Almost endlessly. Well, the
endlessly.
supplement goes from the federal government through September. And so the state, we are long past the 13 weeks. It's time to start terminating those benefits and helping people realize it's time to start feeding your family on your own. Get back to work. That is what makes the economy move.
And these businesses need people.
Yes.
I've heard some, they can't open up enough of their business because they don't have the employees. They
Right.
want to open, they can open now,
That's exactly
but
right.
they can't because they don't have the employees to do the work.
Right. And, you know, people are going back to COVID and their fear, and I just don't think we need to live in that fear. I think the employers are responsible. There's been a lot of people that have been immunized, and it's time to get back to work and start moving the economy again.
What are businesses? Can you give us some case stories? Not maybe name the businesses, but you've been working on this for a long time. Give us some examples of what's been going on, Carla.
So we had an employer that held kind of a job fair because they had so many positions to fill now that they're able to operate again. They had 28 people sign up for interviews. Of those 28, only 3 people showed up. Only one who was offered the job turned it down. The other 2 were not qualified for the position. So 28 people, 1 person qualified, and that person said, no thanks, I'm still getting unemployment, but if you want to wait a few months, I'll consider taking your job. So what's an employer to do? How are they supposed to run their business without employees?
We'll ask you, you're New Mexico Business Coalition, you have the answer. Carla, what are they supposed to do? Carla?
Well, they can't do anything until the government stops the handout so that people will find a reason to get back to work.
Have you contacted state legislators on this?
We have. Unfortunately, their hands have been tied on so much of this. These are decisions, just like the reinstatement of the work search requirement, happened on Mother's Day, very quietly. It just appears on Workforce Solutions website, and we're guessing that they must be notifying employees now as they're trying to requalify for benefits. But there was no big announcement. The governor had said several weeks ago that she was looking at enticements to get people back to work. Entice them, take them off of the dole, do something, but let's get them back to work, because employers can't do anything until government takes action.
The length of it, do we know? I mean, you said now the work requirement, at least just searching, proving that they've searched. Do we know the length? Is it 13 weeks or is it still endless?
We have not seen an end to it coming, except for the federal supplement that ends in September. Where the state is, we don't know. They continue to allow people to collect, and the 13 weeks has long since expired. There were people at the beginning of the pandemic that had expired their benefits, and now they've been paid for a year, over a year.
And this was pre-COVID reasons for their layoffs as well. They
Yes.
weren't laid off because COVID, the government shut down business. They were laid off for some other reason. Yet,
Or they quit, but they were out of work prior to COVID and expired.
well, if you quit, I don't think you can get benefits if you quit.
Oh, there's new circumstances where you can. Yeah, shouldn't be able to, but yes.
So that was prior. They possibly quit prior to COVID, but for over a year now, they've been getting possibly as much as $1,000 a week.
Yeah, sometimes more, sometimes less, but a lot of money when it's time to turn off that faucet and get them back to work, earning the money that they deserve to be paid for a good day's work.
Seriously, what are these businesses doing?
They're suffering. So the employers, the people that own the business are doing double shifts. A lot of the employees that are working are doubling up on their time and not taking as much time off, and then they have to be paid overtime, and they're doing what they can. They're scrambling to take care of society because we want to start going to restaurants again, right? And going out to shop, and you've got to have employees there to manage that. So the employees that are working really hard and doing much more with very little. And it's
What are their bosses saying about that? And you think about the supermarket employees and the healthcare workers who worked through all of this. They worked for the same wage, grateful from the public, but how are they feeling that perhaps a business down the street that had to close because of government, that those employees are receiving the $1,000 a week, and these supermarket clerks are working very hard?
You know, the American work ethic and the American dream is still alive in many. And there are a lot of people that prefer to provide for their families themselves. and they're happy to work. They're proud of the work that they're doing, and it does our heart good to see them doing that. Some people have lost that motivation, which is unfortunate, but
Because when they're handed, and that's where the power comes in, they're beholden to the person handing them this. And it's kind of a false god, truly, in terms of
Yeah.
receiving this.
there's employers offering sign-on bonuses and all kinds of things to entice people to come back to work. They're trying to entice them away from what the government is handing to them. And we're hoping that American dream will get sparked in some more people and they will just come back and work.
To feel fulfilled with the job.
Yes. And taking care of their family on their own. You see a very different desire in some people. Some people are like, hey, if I'm getting money, I'm good. Others say, I don't want a handout. I'm capable of working. I want to work.
And now we're back to those opportunities. Carla, I'm going to have you on another show just to talk about business in New Mexico, legislation that's hindering business or legislation that perhaps is helping businesses. Is that true? Is there something? Is that true? I have to give both sides. I'm not sure if there aren't both sides, Carla.
There is a little bit of help out there.
Okay, so, and you say you're hopeful.
I'm always hopeful. I have this deep, deep belief and guiding thought. God's in charge. We can do our best, but ultimately, He's got this, and we need to rely on Him and do what we can to fix what we're working on. But we never give up.
And fight at the legislature.
Yes.
In addition, Carla Sonntag, the Executive Director of the New Mexico Business Coalition. Thank you. We'll have you on again. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Have a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinnewater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program or to purchase a copy of any Issues and Answers program, visit sunbroadcasting.org or call us at 505-345-1991.